Alright, this week we're going to go back to a fly that I was introduced to back in Pennsylvania. A good friend of mine, Fred, lived on the Yellow Creek down there in Bedford County. Had a little place right on the river, you know, nice little setup there right below the delayed harvest section, and he had a bench. Every time that I would go, you know, I'd walk right past his place. He'd be on the bench, and he was pretty much a dry fly only guy. He would go and throw some wets and everything every once in a while, but not much of a nymph fisherman or streamers or anything like that. He was pretty much dry fly only. But you'd always see him out on his bench just watching this one steady pool right below his place. Just waiting on some fish to rise. He'd go up, pick a couple off, and then just watch some folks go on about their business and everything. But he was always really friendly to me and everything, and he was one of the first guys that I remember actually sharing information. A lot of folks, I'm sure it was the same way everywhere, but you know, especially back home that I recall, a lot of folks were tight-lipped with information. I mean, if they would pick a couple of fish up on, you know, one certain pattern, and they thought that they, you know, had the whole game figured out, you know, and that they were able to catch fish and nobody else was going to because no one else had that pattern. And it's ridiculous, but a lot of folks were that way. So like I said, Fred was one of the first guys that would actually share information, and he was so detailed on the stuff that he did too. He was a very detailed fly tyer, and probably one of the first mentors that I had as a kid in the fly tying world. So it stands to reason that that's why I got so detailed with my patterns in my early tying career. Now it's more the suggestive than the actual imitation. Just some things that I learned, and you never know. I mean, it may wind up going back full circle. But we're going to go ahead into Fred's March Brown soft hackle. This is going to take me back a couple of years. I haven't tied one of these in at least 15 years. I haven't tied one of these, but we'll go back to Fred's soft hackle, how he taught me, and we'll walk through this one. To start, it had to be rusty brown thread. Rusty brown 8/0 thread. That's the only thing you can use, Josh. If you use anything else, it's wrong. Okay, I didn't understand why, but I took his advice and went with it. So the next thing he did is he took a partridge skin, and the one that I have here, this one's, you can see it's pretty well picked through. The majority of the good feathers are gone, and so we're going to go with one of these older ones. He liked the darker colors anyhow on this, you know, more like the mottled turkey look coloration than the you know, grays, whites, blacks, whatever it may be. So I'm just going to peel this back, and this is what he used for his tail on these. And he would peel 4 to 6 fibers and have this just the length of the hook, maybe a little bit shorter at best. He said, always keep your tails short on these wets. He goes, a lot of people you see, they get them too damn long. He goes, that's not going to catch any fish. He goes, they got to be short. So I worked and worked to make sure that this one met Fred's standards, and every time that I would go back and I'd take a look, he'd be like, you didn't do that right. You didn't do that. Damn it, Josh, how many times I got to tell you? But I finally got one that met his approval, and that was a pretty big day right there. So I'm going to take this up. All the excess you can see while I was rambling on there. I took the excess up to my 2/3 point. I left 1/3 of the hook bare. That's going to be for some dubbing and to finish off with the actual partridge. So there's our fibers right there. Next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take some 8/0 Camel. This is just Uni Thread 8/0. he gave me hell one time. he had a sharp eye, I'm telling you. He gave me hell the one time. I showed him a pattern. He goes, "You tied that with a 6/0 rib, didn't you?" I was like, "Hell, I don't know." He goes, "I can tell it is. It's too thick." He goes, "Go back and do it again." So here we are with the 8/0 Camel. We're going to go ahead and tie this in. Oh, if I can see it there. There we go. There's our 8/0 Camel, and we're just going to set this off to the side. That's going to be our rib that we're going to counter wrap with. And get that cleaned up a little bit better. And then as far as the taper goes on this one, I was told not to worry too much about a taper because it's a wet fly, and wet flies aren't dry flies. You got to worry about tapers on dries, not wets. Okay. So we're just going to take a little bit of Superfine. He used, I want to say it was cream beaver. I want to say that's what it was. Cream beaver dubbing. And he said, keep these bodies as slender as possible. He goes, if you get a little bit of orange showing through there, he goes, that's fine too. Or a little bit of the rusty brown thread. He said, don't worry about that. He goes, just make sure the body's slender and you have it pretty well covered with your tan. So I'm just going to get a little bit more in there. There we go. Just enough. And then what we're going to do is take and counter wrap this rib here. Make sure that it's 8/0. I don't want to see any of these 6/0 ribs out there. I'll tell you to redo it. Go ahead and counter wrap that. Get you, 4 to 6 wraps depending on what size of hook you're tying on. This is a size 14. Depending on how big they are in your water system, 14s were pretty consistent back in Pennsylvania. Sometimes we'd go up to a 12. I've seen them as big as a 10, but 14s were probably the most prevalent that you would see in the March Brown world. Then we're going to form just a quick dubbing loop. I'm going to take my tool here, get this set in, and then we'll half hitch, get this in the cradle. There we go. Now we're going to take some dark hare's ear. This is just hairline, dark hare's ear dubbing. And we're just going to take a quick little pick of this right here. Keep it pretty sparse. I mean, we're not doing, you can see, I mean, we're only covering up probably a half of the third of open hook that we have left. So don't go having a ton of this in here. This is just going to give you a little bit of filler. It's going to give you a change of color on your thorax, and it's going to help prop up your partridge when you tie that in. So you can overlap a little bit on this tan, get your color change, and that's all I really need right there. I want to still leave myself a little bit of space to where I have enough to tie in the partridge, and I'm not going to be rushing the eye on this. I'm still going to be able to whip finish, but it's better to have excess than not enough, and then you got to redo it, and it takes more time to tie. So I'm going to peel this back, leave myself a little bit of space here. Like I said, we're probably only using a half of the third that we had remaining on that hook. And then I'm going to find a good clean, this is dyed partridge, or I don't know for certain that it's partridge. I want to say that it is. I've had this thing for probably just as long as it's been since I've tied the last one of these patterns. But so you talk to 100 different fly tiers on how they tie in their soft hackles, you're going to probably come up with 100 different opinions on how they do it. Some people tie in from the tips, some people tie in from the stems. Some folks will strip one side off completely and just tie with that. The way that I was taught, and the way that I still do it, is I peel back and I tie in from the stem, 1.5 turns, everything's set, you're good to go. So I peel this back, I clip off the excess. This is all I'm working with right here. This is all I'm working with. It's just that one little piece. A lot of people that you'll see when they tie theirs in, and I'll just prep a piece real quick to show you. A lot of folks, what they'll do, and they still turn out good. I mean, it's all in what you get used to tying with, or how you get used to prepping your material, is they'll take this section right here. I had that all out of focus, or all out of the frame, so I'll redo it. So this section right here, they'll pinch this up at the top, peel their fibers back to where they feel they have some consistency, and then go ahead and trim this, and then tie in right from there. So they'll just tie in this one little piece right here, tie that, spin it around. I found that it traps a little bit of fibers that way. I still like tying them in from the stem, and that way I get my first clean wrap with the stem, and I'll explain that as I tie this in. So now I take my package side, or your shiny side, and that is facing toward the eye of the hook. When I wrap it, all my feathers are going to go toward the back, just how you want on your softs or your wets. I'm going to get a couple of good clean wraps in there, and I'm going to trim this excess. Hopefully I don't nick my thread as well. So now I left just, I don't know, probably 1/8 of an inch of the actual stem still on there. That's going to allow me, when I put my hackle pliers on there, I'm going to be able to manipulate that, and it's going to be sitting at a 90-degree opposite of my hook. I'm going to get just 1 or 2 tighter wraps in there. There we go. Everything's clean, nice and secure. I'm going to throw my hackle fibers in here. Now that first wrap, as you can see, I don't have any fibers coming out. This is my next wrap. There's 1 1/2. That's all more that you need in here. You go getting too much and you wind up getting you do any more than 1.5 wraps and your fibers, they wind up just matting together, and it winds up being, I'm trying to talk and do some detailed cuts there at the same time, and it just winds up being too bulky, and it gets all matted down when it gets in the water. This way here, these things still have enough room to where the water's able to get in between them, and they're able to move around and get you a little bit of motion and everything, and it's just a lot cleaner of an appearance, and Fred will tell you it fishes so much better. 1.5 turns, that's the secret. So I'm just going to take and do a quick whip finish on this, clean up my thread wraps as best as I can, tighten that up, and we are good to go. Just kind of preen these back. Everything's nice and clean. You have a nice looking March brown soft hackle. There we go. Get that all nice and pretty for the camera. Got one in there that I just don't like. There we go. But there you have it. There is the March brown soft hackle that I was brought up to tie, how I was instructed to do it. Hopefully I did this one justice after not tying this for about 15 years. But if you guys have any questions on this pattern, or anything that you do different, you know, maybe on your soft hackles or whatever it may be, you want to leave them in the comments, by all means have at it. I'd like to hear some different opinions. Maybe you got some different different techniques that you use. I'm always up to seeing different things. Maybe something will wind up being a little cleaner or a little bit easier to work with. But this is the one that I was taught and the one that I've kind of worked with over the years and kind of have it down to where I like it. But enough rambling. You guys have any questions, comments, as always, leave them with me and I'll get back to you. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next live.